Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca, and I'm super excited about today's video because I'm going to be welcoming my first guest on the channel. The video is going to be focusing on the organ control section on my new Yamaha CK-88 stage piano. So this video does also apply to the new CK-61 stage keyboard. And it's going to be focusing on using these controls with the Hammond organ sample that the CK Series has inherited from Yamaha's Reface line. So we'll be looking at the drawbars, the percussion settings, the vibrato and chorus settings, and of course the rotary speaker controls for the Leslie. Now I'm very new to playing organ, so my original plan for this video was to first of all learn what these organ controls even do, then explain all of that as best as I could to any viewers that are like me and new to playing the organ. And then I would try to demo these settings as well as some of the organ presets that come built into the CK series. But I've never actually even touched a real Hammond organ, so I'm not really the most qualified person to be doing this video, so that brings me to our guest, Marine Lacoste. Marine is the founder and head instructor of OnlineRockLessons.com, which is a great online course for learning how to play rock piano and keyboard that I recently signed up for and I can highly recommend. I've got a link to my review on that course in the description below if you want to check it out. Now, Marine is a lot more than just a piano instructor with an online course. She's a very active pro keyboard player performing regularly with multiple acts, including Uncle Kracker, Corey Hart, and her own hard rock band, Highway Hunters. And what led me to ask Marine if she'd be good enough to help me out on this video is the fact that she's not only a pro piano player, but she is a very accomplished pro Hammond organ player. Okay, so Marine is going to join us in just a minute. She's going to demonstrate the drawbars, percussion controls, vibrato, chorus, and the Leslie rotary speaker controls on her Hammond CK5 organ. And for piano players that are new to the organ like me, I'm hoping she can throw in a couple of quick tips on how to approach playing organ as opposed to piano. Then we'll come back to me on my Yamaha CK-88 and I'll show you how to access those same controls on the CK series, talk a bit about the digital drawbar display, and also go through some of the presets for Hammond organ that are on the CK series, one of which splits the keyboard into two Hammond organs that have different drawbars selected. Okay, so now I would like to introduce you to Marine Lacoste from OnlineRockLessons.com.
Hi everyone, I want to first thank Tony for having me and for the great introduction. So I'm super happy to be here, and in today's video I want to walk you through all the parts that you have on a Hammond organ keyboard. For today's video I'm going to be using the Hammond XK5, but this concept works on pretty much any Hammond organ keyboard or the vintage one. I'm going to walk you through everything that we have here on the board of the Hammond organ. So first, every Hammond organ will have sets of drawbars, and this is what you see over here. So we have 1 set, 2 set, 3 set, and 4 set. There's 9 drawbars each, and we have 2 in the middle here. This is for the bass lines if you have like pedals, but we're not going to be using it for today because I don't have any pedals for that, but if you want to, you can do that here. Now, we're going to come back to the drawbars, but we also have the vibrato right here and the chorus. So this is some effects you can add. We have the percussion here. We're going to talk more about that later. These things here are more for the XK5, but we don't really have that on a regular like vintage Hammond. So this is just a plus if you have like the XK5, but the overdrive effects and reverb, this is not something that you will see on something like this on the vintage organ here. Now we also have black keys here that are presets, and we have the Leslie switch that we're going to be using a lot. All right, so this is pretty much just a tour of the thing here of what we have when we play Hammond organ. Now, usually a vintage organ have 2 manuals. So you will have this one on the top and we have a bottom one here. You can look at this one right here. It's the vintage one. You have like 2 manual. For the XK5, I only have the top for today, but it's gonna work anyway. So when you have 2 manual, you have to know that we have 2 sets of drawbars per manual. Let me explain. So these 2 sets of drawbars are going to be for the top manual right here. And these 2 sets of drawbars are going to be for the bottom manual that you have down here. So if you only have like one, you can only use this 2. But if you have both, you can have like 4 different settings. Now the same thing for the presets of the black key here. So these black keys are going to be presets for the top manual, and you would have the same thing, having another set of presets with the second manual affecting the second manual. All right, so let's talk about the drawbars. The drawbars are basically the heart of the Hammond organ. If there's no drawbars, there's no sound. So if I turn that off, nothing is happening. If I turn it up, we have some sound. So like I said, we have these two for the top manual, but how are we choosing between the two? So this is how it works. It's over here for the presets I've already talked to you about. So basically we have these two notes, the B flat and the B, that are super important because the B flat is actually going to tell you that you want this set of drawbars. And if I choose this one, it's going to be this set of drawbars. You can see here the light is actually changing between the two. If you were on a regular vintage Hammond organ, the note would stay down actually to remember which one you have. So you have to do one in this set of presets. So just to go back to the drawbars, so B flat for the first set here, B natural for the second set here. So basically you're gonna hear what you picked here. So if I do that here, you can see the sound is changing and you can hear that there's like the two sets. All right, so now if I turn these two off, I got nothing. But if I change the preset here, we actually have other sound preset of drawbars that are made into the organ here. That are going to be the same thing as these two sets, but you don't really have like access to it to transform it, to change it. So B flat and B are these two here that you can have access, real-time access. And the last one is cancel, so that's always useful to know. The C right here, the black C here, is just canceling everything that is happening, so you're not going to hear anything if you're on that one. So I usually use the drawbars by ear, I gotta tell you. So mainly what I'm gonna be using are usually the 4 first drawbars here. I think it works great for everything that is in the band context, that you have to play some pads and everything. Sometimes I'm gonna push this one to make it a bit more smoother, or go a bit like this. So there's like tons of options you can do with drawbar settings here, so just have fun with that. But you can start with the 4 first if you just want to add some padding into a real song. But the things behind drawbars is that they work like harmonics. So if I just go with one note here and I push out every single drawbars, so you can hear that this is basically a mix of the root, the third, and the fifth of the note I'm playing. So when you have like a full chord, it adds a lot of harmonic around the chord that you're playing because it works the same thing for each note. So that's the basic concept around drawbars. I don't want to get too much into it, but remember that they work like harmonics, and you can go easily by ear, just trying to figure out what works best in the mix of the band. So like I told you, the first 4, if you're just starting out, works great. If you think it's too much, you can just put one down and just move around with that. If you want to go like full on Hammond organ, you can put everything out and it will go really, really loud. It's usually for, I don't know, for a chorus, something that is bigger. But if you want to keep it smooth, just go with the 4 first right here. Something that is cool to do with the 2 sets of drawbars, or the 4 sets of drawbars, is having different setting on each. So for example, if I know that at some point in the song, I'm going to go with something very smooth, even maybe like this, I could have it here and just have another one here. So this time when I switch, it goes super fast for the switch. So you can go like this and you switch. You just have like one note of presets to switch right here. So that can be useful to do. And it's the same thing, same idea for the bottom manual if you want to have this right here. For the bottom manual, if you're playing like bass players, you want just to do a bass line instead of pads and you're doing it on the bottom one, you can go for something like this. I'm going to do it right here. So it works great on bass lines like this. So it's a great drawbar settings, if you want to start for bass lines here, so it's the first 3 and you push the middle one in like this. But again, if you want to try with some different ideas, it depends really on the style you're playing to. If you want to play a blues or in a rock song, the drawbar setting might change, but these are really like the basics that you can start with. All right, now let's take a look at the other section of the Hammond organ. So I talked about the percussion over here. So this is a very cool effect that you can add in your sound. There's many blues rock players that love to use that. I can even think about like John Lord in Child in Time. The whole beginning uses percussion and it goes like this. So the percussion settings are only going to be working with this set of drawbars. So that's one thing that you got to remember. So you got to put it here and you turn it on and you can hear it's adding something different in the sound. There's nothing here. There's like a kick. This is actually what's added. So for the percussion, you have a few options that you can add. You can go even soft. That's regular. That's softer. You can also go with fast. So it dies fast or it stays longer. So fast and slow. And you can choose the notes. So the second or the third. Like that. So if I add back, I like it like this. What about? Yeah, something like that. One thing you gotta know about the percussion is that they don't work with legato playing. So if I keep the notes like that, they're not gonna be working. So you have to attack each note if you want to hear it. It can be cool for some licks, and there's many things that you can do with the percussion on. So yeah, that works great. All right, amazing. So that's for the percussion right here. I love it. You can use it in solos, in riffs. Like I say, Child in Time, John Lord used that. Many option here with that sound. Now moving on to the chorus and the vibrato. So this is something that you can add to the sound. I'm just going to turn that off. It adds another effect like this. So this one is for the top manual and this one is for the lower manual. And how it works is that you have vibrato and chorus at the same time, at the same spot. So you have C3, that is chorus 3, V1, that is vibrato 1, C1, V2, etc. So you have to choose between all of these. The most common one is the C3 right here. But if I go to this one, or this one, so you can hear it's the difference. There's a few differences. It doesn't do the same thing on the sound. I'm personally not a big fan of the vibrato. I don't use it very often. I think it's too much sometimes in the band context. I like having the Leslie instead, but honestly, it's something that is super used, that you can have fun with that. So just try it. Just have fun and play around with that. Just add the vibrato, take it off, and see if you like it or not. Now let's move to probably one of the most important thing about Hammond organ, and it's the Leslie. So the Leslie is the Leslie speaker. In this one, it's a simulator of the Leslie speaker, but if you look right in the back over here, this is a real Leslie speaker, and basically what it is, it's you have two horns at the top that are turning like this. This is why we call it the rotary speaker, and you have one at the bottom, a speaker at the bottom here for the bass, and that turns too. And this is what it's gonna give us, this idea of movement and turning around like that. On the CK-5, it's a simulator, obviously, but if you want, you can even plug it into a real Leslie. That's for another story. But here we have the controller, and basically this one is at chorale, that is the slow mode. So we hear it moving, but very slow. And now we have it faster. So we can hear that it goes faster because the horns are spinning faster, like that. On some Leslies, you have the stop mode. That is no Leslie at all. I personally don't really like that, but that's the style, and there's many songs that use that too. So it's really like a perfect line of sound here. So I'm using the low and the fast mode usually. And it's really cool to hear the Leslie slowing down. I like it. So that's for the Leslie. It's everywhere. If you play Hammond organ, you need to use a Leslie because it's part of the sound now. So yeah, going like that. And usually the Leslie, I will switch the Leslie very often. Usually if there's like a long chord, you want to be using it to make the sound move a little bit here. All right, so there we go. So these are the parts that you're going to see on the Hammond organ. Now, I want to end with a quick note. If you're just starting out and you've gone from the piano maybe and going to the Hammond organ, there's a few things that you need to think about. The Hammond organ doesn't have any velocity. So that means if I play super smooth or very hard, it doesn't change anything. So that's a big difference with the piano because you have to think about that. And how we're going to do velocity, it's using drawbars, moving like that, or you have a volume pedal. That's on the vintage organ, or you can have one for these keyboards here. So the volume pedal gets very important when you play Hammond organ because if you don't have that, it's always going to be the same volume no matter what you do. And when you play in the band and the whole band goes very smooth, you want to follow along and just go like this or move with the volume pedal. Now, the other thing is that if you compare from a piano to a Hammond organ, there is no sustain on the Hammond organ, and the sound is never going to fade away if you keep holding it. So for the sustain, no matter what I do, the sound is going to cut. So that's why very often it's very cool to have some reverb, because it adds something at the end instead of like really cutting straight. But there's no reverb on every Hammond organ, but you can have like add some effects if you want to, or this one has some. And the other thing is that if I hold one note, it's gonna keep playing forever. It's not gonna die, it's not gonna go away like a piano when you play something and it goes and it fades out. On the Hammond organ, it doesn't. So you have to think about that, because if you wanna hold a note until the end of the song or whatever, you have to fade it out. If not, it's just gonna be very like harsh when you cut the sound. So you have to think about that. No sustain, and it doesn't fade out. So these are the main difference with the velocity. Velocity was one of the big things when I started playing Hammond. I was like, oh my God, I'm playing super hard, but the sound is not louder at all. So make sure that you work with that. So my last tip here is how you can get started. So if you just want to have fun with the Hammond organ, I would suggest that you just pick a song, a rock song, blues song, whatever you like, and try to add some chords, some pads into it, and work with the drawbars around. Like you play something and you're like, okay, that's nice, I like this, and you just play the chords. And since there's like no sustain, make sure that you use chord inversion when you play, so it doesn't sound like this. And you can add some effect with the left hand, like this. Just a slide getting in. You add the Leslie, like this. And you just play over a famous song that you like. I've done videos on how to add Hammond organ on Highway to Hell by AC/DC. I mean, you can add Hammond organ on pretty much anything. So really, have fun. Take a song, have fun with that. Try some drawbar settings, add some effects that we talked about, and see what happens, but just have fun with that. All right, so I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial about the basic of the Hammond organ. So remember to just start, try some things, and have fun. All right, thanks again for having me, and it's back to you, Tony.
Well, that was an awesome intro to the Hammond organ, Marine. Thank you so much for taking the time to help me and my viewers out. Okay, let's take a look at the equivalent controls on the Yamaha CK Series. Okay, so for selecting the Hammond organ voice on the CK, it's the H voice in the organ section. So if I press organ, it's actually the first one, so it's the default, so that's why it comes up right away. But if I scroll through the other voices, you can see I've got V for a Vox, F for Farfisa, Not sure what A is actually, and Y is for Yamaha organ, and then you've got all the other organs like pipe organs, church organs, that type of thing. Now, only the first 5 voices are the ones that actually make use of these drawbars. So when I select a voice, so I've got the Hammond selected, it will default to the first 3 drawbars being down. So you see that on the display in the center there. But if you look to the left, you're going to notice that the physical drawbars aren't even close to that setting. So the way this works is if you load an organ voice or a registration for that matter, it's going to ignore the physical drawbars and also all of the effects knobs, that type of thing as well, until you touch them. So if I play right now, I'm getting the sound that I'm going to get with the first 3 drawbars engaged. So just as an example, if I slide down the last drawbar, you'll see that gets reflected on the digital display, and then as soon as I've touched it, then now that and the display are in sync with each other. It even shows me the number of the setting that I'm at on the that you would see on a normal Hammond organ. They're numbered. So if I turn that one back off, and then same thing for any of the drawbars that are actually in use. You can see number 2 is in use, but it's set to fully engaged. As soon as I touch number 2, then it's going to be reflected in the sound and on the display. See, now it's at 1, and the display is in sync with the physical bars now. So what I tend to do whenever I use the organ voices, just to make things easy for myself, is as soon as I've loaded the registration or just started from a fresh organ voice, is I adjust the physical drawbars to match what the display is for that setting, so that there's no confusion. So the drawbars have the same effect on the sound as Marine demonstrated in her video. If I turn all the drawbars off, you're not going to hear anything. And as she mentioned, the drawbars add different harmonics to each note you're playing. So if I just hold down a C note and then I turn these on one by one, you can hear there's different harmonics happening here. And this is really a big part of what makes the Hammond organ sound so amazing, is all the extra harmonics that are being added into whatever you're playing. They really fill out the sound. Now, a couple of settings that Marine recommended for organ newbies like myself is the first 4 drawbars down. And she typically recommends turning on the Leslie, leaving it on low. So that's going to be a sound like this. And if you want a softer sound, she recommends moving up drawbars 2 and 4. So if you're just looking for a softer sound to kind of be like a pad that's more in the background of a song you're playing with your band, that's what she would recommend doing. And then for a bass guitar, or not bass guitar, but just a bass sound on the Hammond organ, recommends just going with 1 and 3 only. Now, Marine also mentioned that there's multiple sets of drawbars. There's actually 2 sets for the top keyboard and 2 sets for the bottom if you have one on a real organ. Now, clearly the CK only has 1 set of drawbars. But if you wanted to play the CK as an upper and lower organ, you can actually do that with a MIDI controller or MIDI-compatible keyboard for your lower or your upper. I've actually got a video on how to connect a MIDI keyboard to your CK, which I will link to in the description, but just to show you what you can do with this, I've got my Casio-Tone CTS1 keyboard connected to my CK-88's MIDI import. So I'm going to set the main voice back to be that default of the first 4 drawbars. Then I'm going to turn on voice B, and I'm going to set that to be an organ as well. And this one I'm going to set up to be that bass recommendation of Marine's, so just 1 and 3. Now what I can do, and once again I do have a video linked to in the description that shows you the specifics of how to do all of this, but if I go to Settings, and I go to Function, and External Keyboard, for part A, which is the lead voice, I'm going to set that to be off, so it's just the, that's basically the internal keyboard only, so just the CK-88 is going to trigger those. And then I'm going to go to part B, which is the bass voice that I set up, and I'm going to say I want that to be the external only, so just the CTS1. So now, if I play the CTS1, it's just the bass voice I'm getting. And if I play the CK-88, it's just voice A, which is the 4 drawbars down that I'm getting. So that is super cool. So when I have the zone for the CK-88 selected, which is zone A, so if I select zone A, then I can make changes to the drawbars, and that's only going to affect the CK's sound. So for example, if I turn on, just to make it very obvious, I'm going to turn on this drawbar. So you can hear that drawbar came on. But it did not come on for the CTS1. So it basically depends which one of these you've got selected. Same thing, I could just turn that drawbar back off on this one, and then I'll select B, which is the CTS1, and then I can make drawbar changes to that that won't affect the CK. So if I turn that one on again, you can see now it's down here. And it's on the CTS1. And it hasn't been turned on the CK. And same thing with the Leslie on or off. It is only going to be on or off for whichever voice you have selected. So if I turn the Leslie, let's go to the bass. I'm going to hit stop to turn the Leslie off, and then go back to the CK, and then turn the Leslie on. I'll even turn it to fast. But if I go to the CK, or sorry, to the CTS1, oh, still got that selected. You can hear there's no Leslie there, but there is here. Okay, so for the black preset keys on the left of Marine's keyboard that she talks about, the closest equivalent to that on the CK are going to be setups that you've saved in your registration memory. So you could quickly choose a different registration, and then it's going to load whatever your voices are that you've got set up and whatever your organ drawbar settings are. Now for the two preset keys, the B flat and the B that she mentions, that allows her to quickly toggle back and forth between those two sets of manual drawbars that she has for her main keyboard. You've actually got two options there. You could do the same thing, once again, by just switching back and forth to your registrations that have different drawbar settings. The other option that you could have would be to use the zones to switch things on and off. So for example, if I just go back into settings here, and I go into function, and for the external keyboard, I'm just going to turn that off for zone B as well. So now the CTS1's not doing anything anymore. So now basically I could switch back and forth between these two choices, kind of similarly to how she's doing it with her presets. So I'll play this one. It does take two button presses though. I'd have to go on there and off there. And then that gives me the bass voice. Okay, so for the Leslie controls, I'm just switching back to a clean setup of the Hammond organ there. And I'll choose my first four drawbars. So when I first select that voice, the Leslie is just going to be turned off. The controls are over here on the left. If I play now, I've got no Leslie. And if I hit the speed button, it toggles between slow and fast. So it'll turn it on to slow. So you can hear it oscillating. And then fast. So you just go back and forth, and if you want it to stop, I'll switch it to fast first, and then I'll hit the stop button. You can actually hear it gradually slow down, and then now it's off again. So that's pretty straightforward and easy to use. And as I mentioned earlier, the Leslie effect will be applied to whatever zone or zones you have selected at the time. You could actually have the Leslie effect and any of the effects knobs as well, and the drawbars, if you wanted, applied to multiple zones at the same time by pressing both of them like that at the same time, and then that way you can see both A and B are selected. So that means any changes I make are actually going to affect both of those voices. And also keep in mind the Leslie is just basically running your current sound, whatever it is, through a specific type of external speaker. So you can actually use these rotary controls, unlike the drawbars, with any sound. You could use it with the CFX Grand Piano, for example. Not that you would ever do that, but it is available to you for any sound. And the other thing to note is that there are two rotary speaker options available to you. If I press this effects section on, it defaults to rotary A, which is that one. If I switch it to rotary B, It's quite a bit louder. Basically, Rotary B is described as a rotary speaker connected to a transistor preamplifier with strong distortion. I'm personally not sure that I hear a ton of distortion, but it definitely does have a punchier sound than Rotary A does. But a basic generic Leslie speaker is going to be probably closer to Rotary A. Okay, so on to the percussion. This basically works exactly the same as Marine demonstrated on her Hammond CK5. As she described it, the percussion adds kind of a kick to the sound. So I'm just going to go back to a basic Hammond organ setting and start over. So right now, if you listen to that, and I turn the percussion on, so you can hear it changing the sound. If you want to hear exactly what it's adding, as she demonstrated, you can turn all the drawbars off. If there's no percussion on, there's nothing. But if I turn the drawbar on, you can hear exactly what it is that it's adding. Now when you turn it on, it does default to normal, but you do have some other options. There's soft. So if this is normal, then soft. Just softens it a little bit. And then fast will have it, basically the sound dissipates quicker. So that's normal, and then fast. And you can also choose whether you want to hear the third or the second. So this is the third, and that's the second. So going back to Marine's recommended newbie settings, she recommends using the first 4 drawbars, so I'll turn those on. Recommends turning on the Leslie, so I'll turn that on slow. So this is what it sounds like without the percussion. She also recommends using the third, and she doesn't use the soft or the fast. Now with the percussion on. And also, as Marine mentioned, the percussion doesn't work with legato playing. So if you listen to this E note with the percussion on, then listen to it when I play and hold a C, you're not getting the percussion. You have to attack the note. Okay, so now onto the chorus and vibrato. Once again, basically the same as what Marine demonstrated on her Hammond. You can select one of the 3 vibrato effects or one of the 3 chorus effects. I'm just going to turn the percussion off here. I'm also going to turn off the Leslie so you can really hear this clearly. So if I just play a chord and then cycle through these, this is vibrato 1, vibrato 2, vibrato 3, you can hear that's going a bit faster, and then chorus 1, chorus 2, and chorus 3. And chorus 3 is basically, Marine says she doesn't use this stuff very often, but if she's going to, it's going to be chorus 3 is the most likely one she's going to use. So basically you can play around with these as she mentioned and use them if you like. As I mentioned, she tends not to. She just sticks to the Leslie Rotary instead. It is kind of a similar effect. Turn that off and turn the Leslie on. So it actually is kind of a similar sort of an effect as to the chorus in particular C3. That's C3. And that's the Leslie. So I guess if you wanted some extra enhancement to your sound, you could use that C3 chorus effect or any of the other ones if you happen to like it, and use the Leslie as well. Okay, so that's basically it for using the Hammond controls on the CK. Marine also went over some things to think about for people like me that are new to the Hammond organ that are used to playing piano, which I can say firsthand have really been helpful to me in playing Hammond organ with my band. Things like the fact that there's no velocity, the note won't dissipate as you hold it, so for any gradual velocity or volume changes, you would need to use the drawbars, so like this. Or you could also use a pedal that's set to control your volume. And since the notes don't sustain, switching chords can sound kind of harsh on the organ, so things like this. So her suggestions are to do things like try and use inversions so that your fingers are physically closer to each other. That type of thing, because that smooths the transition a little bit in between chords because there's no sustain pedal to do that like there is on a piano. And then also, the other recommendation is to start including just basic little slides, so sliding in and out of your chord. So I'm going to have to do this a little bit lower because I've got my camera stand up here where I would probably normally want to do this, but things like this. And there's also a lot of finesse in that as well, which I don't have and Marine does, so that's why it sounds better when she does it. But it does really help in transitioning in between your chords. It definitely does take some time to get used to playing this way, and the slides are something you have to just practice a lot like everything else to get used to them. But practice does make perfect, and well, in my case, practice makes you sound better than you did the last time at least. And Marine's recommendation for getting started is pretty much bang on. Just pick a song you like, start playing the chords as a basic background, kind of like a pad, and then from there you can start working on all the other things she recommends. Play around with the drawbars, the percussion, chorus, and vibrato settings, and practice switching the Leslie on and off to get used to what it does. Also try to make sure you're using those chord inversions to keep your hands close together, and also try to integrate some of those small slides to smooth out the chord changes. Okay, so before I conclude this video, I did want to go over a couple more quick things. The first is to use an expression pedal with the organ voices on the CK-88. So I've got a generic M Audio expression pedal, and I've got it connected to the pedal 2 port on my CK. So when you first connect a secondary pedal, you do need to tell the CK what kind of pedal it is. So to do this, you press Menu, and then you go to General, scroll down to Foot Pedal, Pedal 2, and then you want to set the pedal type. So FC7 is actually the model number of Yamaha's expression pedal, so that's the setting I want. And the FC4A, which is the pedal that Yamaha has that does half pedaling, and then the FC3A is half pedaling is off, so that's just a generic sustain pedal basically, which is just a switch. So I want to set that to FC7, which is the expression pedal setting. Now once you've done that, just exit out to the main menu. Now to set what you want the pedal to do, you press Settings. So this setting is going to be savable within a registration like everything else in the Settings menu is. And I'm going to scroll down to Controllers and hit Enter. Go to Foot Pedal 2. And then I'm going to go Assign so I can tell the CK what I want this pedal to do. Now from there you can choose from a crazy number of options. There's over 100 of them. They're on page 54 of the manual if you want a list. But the most common uses for a Hammond organ would be as a volume pedal, which Marine mentions can be a useful way to fade the organ in and out when you need to, as opposed to using the drawbars to do that. So the default behavior, as you can see, is 11, which is expression. Now actually this behaves like an overall volume pedal. So for example, if I hold down a chord and you can't see the pedal at the moment, but I'm just going to start moving the expression pedal back and forth. So you can make gradual adjustments with that. I'm actually not sure why expression means the same thing as all volume, which is number 7. If I go down to number 7 and go all volume, that would be volume for all the different parts of the keyboard, like all of the 3 zones, and do the same thing. It does behave the same way. I'm not sure what the difference is, but either way, that works as a volume pedal. Now you could also do things like switch the rotary speed back and forth, which is number 9. Now this isn't a gradual thing you would normally do with an expression pedal. It is still just an off or an on, so it's not going to be a gradual change in the speed. It's just going to work like it would with a normal sustain pedal if it was connected to this port, and just switch the speed back and forth. So that can be handy if you want to use it for that. And you can also actually even choose to have the expression pedal control an individual drawbar, and you can make gradual changes with that. So basically the equivalent of moving the drawbar in or out. The drawbar 2 2/3, so that's this one. So drawbar number 5, the pedal should adjust that. So that's also pretty cool. And once again, you can control any of the other options that are in that menu. So there's a whole bunch of options for effects and that type of thing. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to go over was some of the super handy Hammond organ presets that are included with the CK series. So I'm in page number 1 right now. If I go to 7, I get a jazz split. So I've got a bass on the left. It's actually exactly what Marine was recommending, number 1 and number 3. And then on the right, I've got the first 3 and then the last one. So I've got a split like this. So that's super handy. And you can also notice that on for the bass, that was set up with C2 on for chorus, no percussion. And it looks like it's Rotary B that they're using, so the one with a little bit of distortion. And if I choose voice B, got C3 for the lead voice in my right hand, and this one has soft percussion turned on. So if I go to 2.7, this is a rock Rotary that has all of the drawbars engaged, as well as some effects turned on, like compression and distortion. Then page 5 is totally devoted to organ, with the first few being all Hammond organ options. This is a comping drawbar, which is very similar to the bass voice, so a very subtle thing to play if you want to stay in the background in your band. Number 2 is a jazz swish, gospel lovers. So once again, we've got a split going on here. That's kind of cool. And then lead organ. And then British organ. Now we're into a Vox, and then a couple of the A1s, and then some other organ options. So that's pretty much it for this video. I want to send a big thank you out to Marine Lacoste for helping out so much. Make sure you check out her course, Online Rock Lessons. I've been enrolled for that for a few months now, and I'm learning a ton. And while her course is a piano course, she also does have a mini course on playing Hammond organ, like John Lord from Deep Purple. And she often posts individual lessons and videos on various Hammond organ topics, as well as the piano topics she posts. And if you're super interested in Hammond organ, Marine is apparently working on adding a full course specific to just playing the Hammond organ to her site that will become a part of onlinerocklessons.com. So I've left links below to my review on onlinerocklessons.com, as well as a link to her site to check out the membership if you're interested in just getting started. And if you do that, make sure you use coupon code PianoTone at checkout, and she will throw in a free Zoom call lesson. And I've also left a link to my video on connecting a MIDI keyboard to your Yamaha CK Series. So thanks a bunch for checking out this video. If you like the content, please smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. That does really help me out. So thanks again for visiting the channel, and happy Hammond organ and piano playing, and have an awesome day.